Hey, what's good, Josh? Man, the Bigga P, and here to share my thoughts on the PBC on Fox card last night, and also I believe the PBC on Fox Sports One card that falls shortly after. On paper, it did look like it was going to be a pretty entertaining card, and for the most part, it was. I mean, I had no complaints. I was entertained all throughout. Um, the first fight was Felix Diaz versus Sammy Vasquez. Originally, I think it was supposed to be Sammy Vasquez versus Louis Collazo, but I think suffered some sort of injury in training. And Diaz, who was already in shape, had another fight that he was scheduled on another PBC card, and I think that they just switched around and bam, we got this fight, which in reality was probably the better fight out of all the other fights that got either canceled or changed up. Um, Going into this fight, I mean Felix Diaz I think was coming off after his first loss last October to Lamont Pearson, a fight which I'm sure myself and a lot of others thought Diaz put off, and Diaz put off clear. I think I know so maybe a 7-5, or maybe I think I had like a 7-5 type of score, 115-113. And then we got all these wild ass scores that were just so wide, and it was so wide and ridiculous for Lamont Peterson. It was crazy. Um, it was also in that fight that I thought I actually saw the potential that Felix Diaz had. Um, because before I wasn't too high on him. I wasn't high on him because of the inactivity and all the other stuff that was going on with him. I was never overly high on him. But that fight, I saw something. That was the first time I saw something. So I was going to this fight hoping that maybe that he'll actually live up to his potential. And then we had Sammy Vasquez, who I've watched since the days when he was when he was down with Mike Tyson's promotion. Tough guy, could punch a little bit. He's also coming off from his fight earlier this January, where he knocked around Aaron Martinez for about 7, 8 rounds and stopped him. Um, to me, it was like an interesting clash of styles. Is it going to be the slick, is it going to be the slick boxer versus the straightforward puncher? Um, it was a good fight. In the early rounds, I think Diaz most likely took it off, and his Vasquez, I mean, he got that round just more on activity and aggression. But as the fight warmed up, like second, third, fourth round, Diaz found his range. Um, it was interesting, and Diaz. I mean, I thought it was a fluke that Diaz was actually able to bully someone like Lamont Peterson around. He did the same thing to Vasquez. I thought he was the smaller guy, and one thing that I noticed from Vasquez is his infighting was just non-existent. Like as soon as he got on the ropes, he just got laced. Um, and then afterwards, and I knew he was in trouble. I knew this something was in trouble when Diaz, I think, landed a jab, like a sort of stiff jab, and Vasquez, you saw his legs do a little James Brown action for a little bit, and then after that, it was just a slow and steady beating. Vasquez got busted up. I mean, he tried. I mean, God willing, he tried going to the body, but he got bullied into the ropes constantly, and he just kept on getting just beat up on the ropes, and then his lip got split open, and I was like, man, like they probably need to stop it. And it got to the point where now Felix was actually clowning around like a prime Gooseman. Only in head movement though, not in like fighting stuff, because Gooseman was a special challenge. Just on the head movement and the clowning around and stuff like that. Um, it was getting bad. And then after, I think in the ninth round or whatever, I think a headbutt opened up another cut. A headbutt opened up another cut over Vasquez, and he was just a mess. Like honestly, I wanted this corner to pull him out because I was like, don't let him take all this punishment for nothing. The 10th round, Vasquez, started straying a little low with the no, Vasquez started spinning on his mouthpiece. His mouthpiece came up before by a punch, and then he couldn't keep his mouthpiece in. So, of course, you got to take the point. This will come into play later in the decision that would be announced. The first decision, at least. So, I mean, pretty much Diaz, beats him from pillar to post. Although Vasquez he did pull up like a last stand type of rally, but it was just a little bit too late. Yeah, I thought Diaz had won that easy. I thought 99-90. I think that was the score I gave him. So imagine my surprise when I heard one judge scored it 96-94 for Diaz. And then why would he say the guy's name? And I'm like, thinking to myself, oh my God, he's going to, it's either going to be a split or a majority. And then he said, and yeah, both judges scored about 95-95. And I'm like, and I'm absolutely sorry. I'm starting to lose my shit right now because I'm thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. That fight was not that close at all. At all. I mean, the first score that I actually gave the fight Diaz, it's whatever. 96-94, you want to give him 6-4, fine. That's what you do. Well, at least Diaz was the winner. I mean, but to see a draw in this fight is like you'd have to. I was like losing my shit. It's like, how do you give Vasquez 5 rounds? 5 rounds of what? What do you give 5 rounds to for Vasquez? And I'm not there like losing my shit a little bit. I'm like, this is this piss poor judge. Why is Vasquez getting saved? Why is Diaz getting robbed again? Um, so of course they went back and they had the judges recalculate the scores. Turns out that all three judges didn't bother to take off the point in the last round that Vasquez got docked for spitting out his mouthpiece. Come on, people. I mean, really? So recalculating that, so now, they got back around. We recalculated the scores, and it was 96-93 Diaz, and then 95-94, 95-94 for your winner, Felix Diaz. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck did just happen? Diaz won, and that's what I'm happy about. But the fact that a point deduction was the difference between him winning and getting a draw in a fight that he clearly won, it just blew my mind. The Alabama Commission should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, I could see it if it was just one judge that maybe fucked up on the scores, but having all three judges fuck up on the scores, are you kidding me? What? I was just flabbergasted at this. I'm like, you're about to rob a hard-earned victory from a guy who clearly deserved it to a guy who was just absolutely beaten up. So luckily, like I said, Diaz got his rightful win. In the process, he took Sammy Vasquez 0. But like I said, it just rubbed me wrong. Like 96-93, like I don't have any problem with the first judge's score other than he was just incompetent for not taking the point. But the first judges, I was like, but if the referee says dock a point, I mean, because it opens up a can of worms. It's like, was the point deduction really the case for him to win, or was this some other kind of fuckery that was going on the judges' scorecards? I mean, to me, I think this is like multi-layered. I think there was a level of, there was that level of all that nonsense that came, and then I'm pretty sure there was a probably behind the scenes type of nonsense of what went down with those scores. But I'm just happy that Diaz actually got his win and got some momentum back because he deserved it. As for Vasquez, he needs more work. I mean, looks like he's a tough guy, tough kid. Punches, decent puncher or whatever. But the defensive liability he had, and then the lack of infighting, and a jab that he was consistent before in early rounds, but then he kind of abandoned or didn't really put too much to it, really came into play and just needs a little bit more work. But yeah, I still can't get over just the fact that the only reason Diaz got a victory was because two judges forgot to take off a point in the 10th round. That just absolutely blows my mind. I'm so curious. I actually want to know what the actual scores were for the rounds. Hopefully, maybe they'll reveal those scorecards of what round the Vasquez went and who actually won the 10th round on their cards, if that was the case. So yeah, that was the first fight, and so that card got off on a very on a very interesting note. And then the second fight was Montero versus Erickson Lubin, who had just recently fought too, which was kind of crazy. Um, I have no problems with that. I mean, hey, it's a stay busy fight. Lubin is a young guy. It's good that he's actually active. He's actually more active than most of the cats are in PBC for some reason. Which always makes me think is like, when they complain about, oh, they're not fighting, they're not getting the right fights. But Lubin's over there fighting damn near a month, after his last fight. So, it's kind of crazy. But I don't mind it. I think, a young fighter like him should be fighting as much as usual. I mean, stay busy, you don't get rusty. In this fight, however, I was not impressed. Montero was a tough guy, so that's what I mean, went the distance. But one thing about this fight that I mean, Lubin showed no jab at all, which I found absolutely shocking. Like literally, it was just linging punches and pulling back from punches. These are recipes. Now he's a young fighter, and these can all be corrected. But he was lucky that he was not. Although he was facing a tough guy, he was not facing a guy that had probably posed any serious threat to him offensively, because a couple of those. Because the way he was fighting would have probably gotten him knocked out by someone of a higher class of opponent, or knocked down again. Um, it wasn't impressive. He won and he won clearly, but it was not impressive. And like I said, he's a young guy, so I mean, I can't hold too much against him. He's not like he's been in the sport for like 7, 8 years holding a belt, and he's still showing some crazy flaws or whatever. Um, but yeah, I would whoever is his trainer, if I would recommend him actually utilizing a jab and not to wing punches and not to pull back from punches, because as offensive, as gifted as he is, these are things that will probably catch up to him. The second that he moves up in his competition. So, I mean, nothing more to say about the fight. Like I said, Montoro said he was a tough guy. He stood in there for 8 rounds. And he gave him work. I mean, that's all you can ask him to do. So, I mean, kudos to him. So it brings us to our main event, Deontay Wilder versus Chris Arreola. Originally, it was supposed to be Deontay Wilder versus Alexander Povetkin, but of course, as everyone knows, Povetkin got popped with the meldonium, which is like the 2016 PED of the year so far, and ruined a fight that I was looking forward to a fight that I was not looking forward to at all. I don't think anyone really was, especially considering the fact that Arreola is coming back from a suspension because he got popped for marijuana, I think, or something in the system. He got popped for marijuana in his last fight that got turned to a no contest. It's a fight which he didn't look good in anyway. He hasn't looked good in any fight really in a while. Probably since he beat Seth Mitchell. You remember that name? So yeah, it was one of those fights that I was just not I was not looking forward to it. And then we have Wilder, who's pretty much coming off. Who's the last person that he actually fought? No, it wasn't the Baker or the. I actually forgot who he actually fought last before this. I usually don't forget these things, especially because it was televised. But yeah, I was not looking forward to this fight because I think Arreola has seen his better days and his punch resistance, and he doesn't come in shape. I mean, there's only so many times, and there's only so many times you can see the same thing over and over again, especially Chris Arreola on a short distance. And you think that someone who was probably like maybe a last minute entry or a last minute replacement, you would have gotten paid more. I mean, to me, I think the disparity of what they got paid was also kind of interesting because I read, I think, before the fight. I mean, Deontay is getting about 1.2 million, and then you have Chris Arreola that's getting 150,000. I'm like, well, I mean, in a way, it's like Chris, is coming off suspension. He hasn't won a fight in a while, so it's like, yeah, I mean, that's why you probably should get paid, and then, but it's just like, but the beating that he eventually took, I think, was probably worth a little bit more than that. One thing that I noticed immediately off the bat was Deontay's right arm looked like an absolute mess. I mean, at first I thought, okay, maybe he got himself another tattoo, but it clearly looked like something was bleeding, and it was bleeding consistently. So I'm like thinking to myself, like, man, this is like, this is that looks weird. I mean, I was reading things from a staph infection, which I'm pretty sure if it was staph, he would have never been allowed to fight in the first place, much less be near anybody. Um, I mean, and I think it was explained that he had like a yard work accident and stuff like that. And I'm like thinking to myself, wow, that must have been hell of an accident for his elbow to be bleeding, like his arm and the elbow to be bleeding like that. But yeah, he handled him. I mean, he did a couple of things. He leans. I mean, Wilder still. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of improvement. I mean, other than yes, he utilized the jab. I mean, when he was inside, he utilized the uppercut, but he still laid on the rope. He still got on the ropes. So he still leaned away from punches. You know, he still invited people to cover up. I mean, he covered up in the shell and let Chris Arreola like pound his body, which is not necessarily the best thing in the world to do, even with this version of Chris Arreola, because you just never know, you might get caught with something. You know, there's a lot of clowning. I mean, it wasn't an overly exciting fight, but Wilder did what they had to do. I mean, he busted him. He knocked him down in the fourth round. He almost put him out. Um, and then it looked like Arreola had recovered well enough to actually, see maybe he might actually last distance. But then afterwards, a right hand I think shut his eye, and then he started bleeding from his nose, and it was just bad. So, and I think at the end of the eighth or the ninth round, I was like, everyone, myself, was like, got to stop the fight. I mean, Chris is done. Thankfully, the corner did stop the fight, because I was like, I mean, because it was getting to the point where you were just anticipating, like, if Wilder lands that right hand out, actually that flattens him, and thankfully we didn't get to that type of conclusion. And then in the interview, of course, it was revealed that Deontay said that he had suffered like a pulled bicep or tricep, and then a broken right hand too, and so yeah, I mean, unfortunately, taking a fight like this, a stay busy fight, I guess, and now he's probably going to be out for some time. So it's going to be interesting to see where that title is going. And most likely, if it's going to be an interim title situation going on, that's about to happen. Someone's got to call themselves the WBC heavyweight champion until he comes back. So we'll see about that. As for Arreola, I mean, he's done. I honestly, truly think he's done. I mean, at his age, I mean, it's like, do we get him to get into shape? He doesn't get into shape. And I mean, granted, this is the last minute, but he doesn't stay in shape for a fighter. I mean, he just got off a suspension. I mean, where does he go? He's just gonna. I mean, right now his career path is pretty much going into journeyman status, and I don't really want to see that for him. He's gonna be a mess if he doesn't stop fighting soon enough. So that's just my thoughts. He was an entertaining guy. I mean, I liked him when he was fighting, but like I said, there's just too much. I mean, there's some people that are just never going to change completely what they are, and unfortunately, I think that's him. So that took us from the main PBC card, and then afterwards it switched over to PBC at Fox Sports 1, where there were two more fights. The first fight was Jamal James, the undefeated prospect, versus Wale Omotoso, who is who's to try to maintain some relevancy in the welterweight division, and I think highly of him too. I really do. I mean, he's a tough guy. I mean, I think the first time I saw him was against Jesse Vargas, which was a underrated fight in that aspect. I think the last fight I saw him in was against Sammy Vasquez, which he did lose that fight, but he did bust up Sammy pretty good. This fight, however, I thought there was a little bit of a robbery. I thought Jamal. But first of all, I had to say this: this fight was wild. I mean, the knockdown in the first round, it was a wild type of fight. There was nothing overly technical about it. I thought Jamal, gave a good account of himself. At least, I mean, although I thought the pressure, I mean, he hung in there, but I really thought Wale actually, I think the pressure, I think he piled up more ends. I mean, I think I agree with the ones, I think it was like 96-94, 96-93. I think and I agree with that score. But the other scores were just wide again. And I'm thinking to myself, this is bullshit. Wale won that fight. I mean, if you want to say he loses, I mean, Okay, you can see, okay, maybe he may have lost by a point or whatever, but the other scores were a little bit too wide for my liking. Especially when I don't think Jamal really even hurt him all that much. Um, so I mean, it's a shame that Wally got shafted again on national TV, and just to keep and then Jamal still remains undefeated and remains a prospect. That's all I really have to say about that fight. And then the last fight of the night was it Sergio Reyes versus Victor Chin. Now this fight, and this is now what I feel about Chris Arreola in terms of retirement is also what I feel about Vic right now. Now, if you follow Victor Chin's career, I mean, the guy was an absolute monster at flyweight and super flyweight. And I mentioned before, I mean, he's one of those fighters that I would say one of the few fighters that I would say that he was going to kill somebody in the ring one day, and he almost did in one fight. Um, yeah, I mean, he was just incredible. Um, but once he left 115, that's when you start the chinks in his armor started coming apart with it because he never changed the style how he fights. I mean, he had a couple of good wins at 118, with the losses accumulated, and then after that 122, and then finally at 126, where he's facing the likes of Cuellar and Nicholas Walters at that weight, God forbid, and just getting annihilated by them. But the one thing you could say is that his losses were to top tier fighters. This loss was not to a top tier fighter, and it was probably one of the scarier knockout losses I've seen in some time. Vic, who's 40 years old right now, and several years removed from his actual prime, at least. I mean, I'm talking about at least 5 years removed from his prime. 5 years probably removed from his actual, from his last relevant victory. 4 years probably from a really good victory. Um, so yeah, it was just like, I mean, he fought the way he usually did, and then in the second round, he got his lights turned out. And first of all, I saw it because it was so swift. I was thinking, okay, I don't think I saw a punch land, but on slow mo, it was just right on the chin. And it was just flattened, and I was just like, and I turned away. I was like, oh. So yeah, just seeing that again, but this time from an actual journeyman, and I put nothing against him. I mean, the rest did what he had to do. He won the fight, and but that knockout was a curtain call knockout for Victor Chen, and I really hope that he hangs it up. Yeah, I really hope that because this is the last time that I see Victor Chen in the ring or Vic on national TV again fighting. And he does something else. It was just because that knockout was just way too brutal, and they're coming way too frequently, and he's a guy that I think that could probably make the Hall of Fame, but you don't want to make the Hall of Fame, having getting to the point where you're getting journeyman knocking you out, knocking you out the way he got knocked out. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the PBC card. Like I said, it was entertaining. It was an entertaining night overall of boxing. Not mad at it. So yep. Until next time, peace.